Hollywood, 1961. Soundstage 12 smelled of hot lights, cigarette smoke, and impatience. The kind of impatience that only existed on big sets where money burned by the minute, and egos burned even faster. Crew members moved carefully, quietly. They always did when he was around, not Dean Martin, the other one. The actor with top billing. The one whose name appeared first on the poster. The one who believed success gave him ownership over the room. Dean Martin stood near the edge of the set, leaning against a wooden crate marked props. Jacket open. Tie loose. A paper cup of coffee in his hand that had already gone cold. He didn't seem rushed. Didn't seem tense. That was Dean's problem, people said. Too relaxed. Too smooth. As if nothing ever bothered him. Some thought it was an act. Others thought it was arrogance. Very few understood it was discipline. As across the room, the lead actor rehearsed his lines loudly, too loudly. Projecting even when the cameras weren't rolling. Again, he snapped at the script supervisor. No, not like that. You're missing the rhythm. The rhythm. Dean watched without comment. A younger crew member leaned toward another and whispered, "Does he always talk like that?" The answer came quickly, "Only when Dean's around." The first jab came casually. "Hey, Dino," the actor said without turning around, "you planning on showing up today, or you been accruing your way through the scene again?" A few nervous laughs scattered across the set. Dean smiled politely. Not amused. Not insulted, just polite. He took a slow sip of coffee and said nothing. That silence bothered the actor more than a comeback ever could. Most men fired back. Most men defended themselves. Dean didn't, and that confused people. The director cleared his throat. Places, everyone. The cameras rolled. The scene began. Dean delivered his line smoothly. Effortless. Natural. Like he wasn't acting, just existing. The other actor overplayed his part. Big gestures. Sharp pauses. Trying to dominate the frame. Halfway through the scene he cut, the actor suddenly barked. That was off. The director blinked. I didn't call, he missed his cue, the actor said, pointing at Dean. Again. All eyes turned. Dean glanced at the script. Then at the director. I hit it, he said calmly. The actor scoffed. Maybe in Vegas timing. Not in a real picture. The room tightened. That line crossed something invisible. Vegas. They always said Vegas like it wasn't Hollywood enough. Like the Sands, the Rat Pack, the packed rooms full of applause somehow made Dean less legitimate. Dean nodded once. No sarcasm. No defense. Let's go again, he said. The scene restarted. This time, Dean delivered the line with subtle precision. Perfect timing. Perfect restraint. The crew noticed, the actor did too, and it irritated him. Another cut, another comment. Another joke, sharper this time. You know, the actor said loudly, some of us actually prepare for roles. The laughter didn't come this time. Dean adjusted his cuff. Slowly, I prepare, he said softly. The actor laughed. Sure you do. Something changed in the room, not dramatic, not explosive, just a shift. Dean Martin looked up, not angry. Not hurt, measured. For the first time, he didn't look amused either, but he still didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult back. He didn't even look at the actor. Instead, he looked past him. At the director. At the crew. At the room. As if taking inventory. As if deciding something. People thought the moment would pass. That Dean would smooth it over with a joke. He didn't. He stood there silent, composed, while the actor filled the space with noise, and in that contrast, something became clearer. One man was loud because he needed to be heard. The other was quiet because he already was. No one on that set understood it yet, but they were about to. The set didn't relax after the scene reset. If anything, it tightened. People whispered less. Walked slower. As if the air itself had learned to listen. Dean Martin returned to his mark without a word. No sigh. No eye roll, just presence. The actor, on the other hand, felt the shift and hated it. Men like him thrived on reaction. Anger. Defensiveness. Something to push against. Dean gave him nothing. The cameras rolled again. This time, the actor rushed his lines, aggressive, clipped. He stepped into Dean's space deliberately, trying to dominate the frame. Dean didn't move back. He didn't move forward either. He simply stayed grounded. When his turn came, Dean delivered the line quietly, almost conversational. But it landed, harder than shouting ever could. The room felt it. Cut, the director said softly, not annoyed. Not angry, thoughtful. The actor spun around. What was that? Dean looked at him, not challengingly, not submissively, just directly. That was the line, Dean said. The actor laughed, but it sounded forced now. You're underplaying it. Dean shrugged slightly. That's a choice. A choice, simple words. But they carried weight, because Dean wasn't asking permission. The director nodded slowly. Let's take 5. A break. On a set this expensive, breaks were rare. And everyone knew why this one happened. Crew members scattered, pretending to busy themselves. But ears stayed open. The actor lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. He didn't look at Dean, but he spoke loudly enough to be heard. You know, he said, Hollywood's full of guys who think charm replaces craft. Dean sat down on a wooden chair near the wall. Crossed one leg over the other, unbothered. A makeup assistant glanced at him nervously. You okay, Mr. Martin? Dean smiled at her. Always. That smile wasn't defiance, it was certainty. The actor couldn't stand it. He stepped closer now, too close. Close enough that the crew noticed. You ever wonder why you never get taken seriously, he said. All that singing. All that smiling. Dean looked up at him. For a moment, it seemed like this was it. The moment the mask would drop. Instead, Dean said calmly, no, just one word. No explanation. No argument, the actor scoffed. Figures. He walked away, muttering something under his breath. Dean didn't follow him with his eyes. He looked at the set instead, the lights. The cameras. The quiet. He'd been here before, not this set, but this moment. In New York clubs where drunk executives tested him. In Vegas backrooms where men with harder reputations waited to see if he'd flinch. Dean Martin had learned something early. The louder a man needed to be, the less certain he was of his power. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The director returned. All right, let's go again. Everyone took their places. The scene restarted. This time, something was different. The actor held back. Measured himself. Dean noticed. So did the crew. Dean's performance didn't change, but its effect did. Every line landed cleaner, every pause felt intentional. It wasn't flashy. It was controlled, and that control began to dominate the scene halfway through. Cut, the director said, satisfied. A small nod. That nod mattered. The actor noticed it too. His jaw tightened. As the crew reset for the next scene, whispers spread quietly. He's doing it again, someone murmured. Doing what? Winning without fighting. The actor overheard. He walked toward the director now. Lowered his voice. I don't like the way he's playing it, he said. It undermines the scene. The director didn't answer right away. Then, it works. That was all. 2 words. The actor looked stunned. Dean didn't even look over it. He was reviewing his script, calmly marking a line with a pencil. As if none of this mattered, but it did. It mattered deeply, because something dangerous was happening, not loudly. Not dramatically. A quiet authority was taking the room. The actor returned to his mark for the final take of the day. He looked at Dean, not with mockery now, with calculation. The cameras rolled this time. The actor delivered his lines cleanly, controlled. Dean matched him perfectly. 2 professionals, but only one of them looked effortless. When the scene ended, that's a wrap for today, the director announced. Relief moved through the set like air returning to lungs. Dean closed his script and stood. The actor watched him, waited. Maybe for a parting comment. A joke. A smile. Dean didn't offer one. He simply nodded once, to the director, to the crew, then picked up his coat. As he walked toward the exit, a grip quietly said, Good work, Mr. Martin. Dean smiled. Thank you. Behind him, the actor stood frozen. For the first time that day, he said nothing, because deep down, he understood something unsettling. Dean Martin wasn't avoiding confrontation, he was choosing when and how to end it, and the ending hadn't come yet. The next morning, the set felt different, not calmer. Sharper. As if everyone knew something unfinished was waiting in the air. Dean Martin arrived early. He always did, not because he needed the time, but because he liked to see a place before it filled with noise. He greeted the doorman by name. Nodded to the grips. Smiled at wardrobe. Nothing about him suggested tension, but inside the building, tension was everywhere. The actor arrived late, very late. When he finally walked onto the soundstage, conversation stopped. Heads turned. People straightened up. Power announces itself like that. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He went straight to makeup, speaking loudly enough for the room to hear. Let's get this over with. Dean was already on set, script in hand. The actor glanced at him. Just once. No smile. No jab, not yet. The director called for rehearsal. The scene was heavier today. More emotional. Less room for tricks. Two men facing each other. Tension written into the script. Irony wasn't lost on anyone. They began. Dean listened carefully, really listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak, the actor delivered his lines with force, sharp. Cutting. Dean responded with restraint, quiet strength. The balance was dangerous now. During a pause, the actor suddenly improvised a line not in the script. A personal line. Some men hide behind charm because they're afraid of being exposed. The room froze. This wasn't acting anymore. Dean didn't blink. He looked at the actor calmly and said the scripted line, but something in his tone changed, not louder, deeper. The director called cut immediately. That line wasn't in the script, he said. The actor shrugged. Felt right. No one laughed. Dean closed his script slowly, very slowly. That movement alone pulled attention. He looked at the actor, not with anger, not with surprise, with clarity. I'd appreciate it, Dean said evenly, if we stayed on the page. The actor smiled thinly. Or what? There it was, the challenge everyone felt coming. The room held its breath. Dean didn't answer right away. He studied the actor for a moment, not sizing him up physically, assessing him. Then Dean said quietly, or we won't. Confusion rippled. The actor frowned. Won't what? Dean met his eyes. Continue. A few crew members exchanged looks. The director stepped in. Let's reset. But the actor wasn't finished. No, he said, louder now. I want to understand something. He turned to the room. You all see this, right? Silence. Guy walks around like nothing touches him. Never commits. Never digs deep. Dean said nothing. The actor stepped closer. You think that makes you untouchable? That word, untouchable. Dean stood, not abruptly. Not aggressively. He stood like a man standing up from dinner, calm. Measured. He adjusted his jacket, then he spoke, still soft. I think you're confusing restraint with fear. The actor laughed, too quickly. That's so? Dean nodded once. Yes. The director tried again. That's enough. But the actor waved him off. No. I want to hear this. Dean didn't raise his voice. Didn't insult him. He said something worse. Some people perform for the room, Dean said. Others let the room come to them. That landed hard. The actor's smile vanished. That's real rich coming from a nightclub singer. A sharp inhale rippled across the set. That was the line. Everyone knew it. Dean looked at him for a long moment, then he turned, not away from the actor, toward the director. I'm done for today, Dean said. The words were simple, but the effect was seismic. The director stared. Dean, I'll be in my trailer, Dean said calmly. We can talk later. The actor laughed loudly. Running away? Dean paused, turned back just enough to look at him, not angry, not offended, certain. No, Dean said. Setting a boundary. Then he walked off the set. Shouting. No slam of doors, just footsteps. The room didn't move for several seconds. Finally, the director exhaled. Take 10. The actor stood there, alone. No applause. No support. For the first time since this began, the power in the room wasn't his. People avoided his eyes as they passed. Someone whispered, he just shut the whole thing down. Another replied quietly, yeah. And he didn't even try. In his trailer, Dean sat down and loosened his tie. Shaking hands. No anger, just stillness. He'd made his decision, and when Dean Martin made a decision, it wasn't emotional. It was final. 10 minutes passed, then 20.01 touched the cameras. 1 reset the lights. The set existed in an uncomfortable pause, like a held breath that refused to release. The actor paced near his mark, cigarette burning between his fingers. He tried to look relaxed. He wasn't. The director sat in his chair, staring at the floor. He had a problem now. Not a creative one. A human one. Dean Martin was in his trailer, not sulking. Not waiting for an apology, sitting quietly. He poured himself a cup of water. Took a slow drink. He'd walked away from sets before. From clubs. From rooms where respect disappeared every time. The result was the same as silence did what arguments never could. A knock came at the trailer door. Soft. Respectful. Dean opened it. The assistant director stood there, uneasy. Dean, the director would like to talk. Dean nodded. Give me a minute. He adjusted his jacket, straightened his cuffs, then stepped out. As Dean walked back toward the soundstage, word spread without words. Heads turned, conversations stopped. The actor noticed first. He stopped pacing, watched. Dean didn't look at him. He walked straight to the director. They spoke quietly. No one could hear the words, but everyone could feel their weight. The director nodded. Once. Then again. Dean turned, faced the room, not dramatically, not like a speech was coming, just a simple presence. I'm happy to work, Dean said evenly, when there's mutual respect. No accusation. No names, just a condition. Then he looked at the actor. Finally, the actor opened his mouth. Dean raised a hand, not in anger. In finality. I'm not here to compete, Dean said. I'm here to do the work. Silence. The actor laughed weakly. Is that supposed to be a threat? Dean shook his head. No one worded. The room leaned in. It's a choice. That was it. Follow-up. No justification. Dean nodded to the director, then turned and walked, not back to his trailer, toward the exit. The actor's face drained. You can't just walk off, he said loudly. Dean didn't stop walking. The director stood. Actually, he said, he can. That sentence landed like a gavel. The actor stared. You're siding with him? The director didn't hesitate. I'm siding with the picture. And in that moment, everyone understood Dean Martin wasn't replaceable, not because of fame, because of gravity. The actor threw his cigarette to the floor. Fine. He stormed off toward his own trailer. The set remained frozen. Finally, the director exhaled deeply. We'll resume tomorrow. No one argued that night. The story traveled, quietly, from studio offices to private dinners. From whispered conversations to closed-door meetings. Dean Martin walked off a set, and no one chased him. That mattered. By morning, the tone had changed. The actor arrived early this time, very early. Dean arrived on schedule. When he stepped onto the set, something unexpected happened. Applause, not loud, not dramatic, but real. A few grips. A makeup artist. A camera operator. Dean acknowledged it with a nod. The actor stood near the director, stiff. When Dean passed him, the actor spoke low. Controlled. Look, he said. Let's just finish the movie. Dean stopped, turned, met his eyes. That's all I ever wanted, Dean said, and nothing more and nothing less. The cameras rolled. The rest of the shoot went smoothly. No improvisations. No jabs, just work, professional. Focused. When the final scene wrapped, the director called cut. That's a picture. Relief flooded the set. The actor walked away without a word. Dean stayed, thanked the crew, shook hands. As he picked up his coat, a young production assistant asked softly, Mr. Martin, how did you know when to stop? Dean smiled. You don't stop, he said. You decide. Then he walked out, and long after he was gone, the silence he left behind was still doing its work. Hollywood didn't hear the story all at once. It arrived in fragments. A line here. A pause there. Dean walked. No shouting. No fight. He shut the whole set down. Producers heard it first. They didn't care about drama. They cared about control, and Dean Martin had demonstrated something rare. He could stop a production without causing chaos that made people listen. At studio lunches, his name came up quietly. Did you hear what happened? Yeah. And the director backed him. That last part mattered most. Directors didn't back actors lightly. They backed results. Agents noticed too. Dean's agent got 3 calls in one afternoon, not about replacing him, about availability. People wanted him because he was steady. Because he didn't leak stories. Because he didn't posture. Because when he spoke, it meant something. The actor, his phone rang too, but the tone was different. Questions instead of offers. What happened on that set? Why did you push it? Nobody accused him openly. Hollywood rarely does. It just adjusts. At a private dinner a week later, a producer leaned across the table and said, You know what I like about Dean? Another replied, He knows when to leave. No, the first said. He knows when not to stay. Dean didn't talk about the incident, not to the press. Not to friends. When asked, he smiled and changed the subject. That silence became part of the story. In Vegas, the tale grew sharper. Men who understood power without noise nodded knowingly. That's Dino, someone said. Always been like that. Frank Sinatra heard about it on a flight. He laughed quietly. That figures, he said. Dean never needed to prove anything. On another set months later, a young actor watched Dean work. Soft-spoken. Precise. When a tense moment arose, the actor braced himself. Dean handled it with a glance, and the room obeyed. The lesson spread, not loudly but clearly. You didn't test Dean Martin, not because he'd fight you, because he'd leave you alone in the noise you created. The film premiered, critics praised the performances, they didn't mention the tension, but audiences felt something they couldn't name: control. Restraint. Authority. Dean's scenes held weight, the actors felt strained. Hollywood noticed, again, years later. Someone asked the director about it. He paused, then said, I learned more about leadership from Dean Martin that week than from anyone I'd ever worked with. The interviewer asked, what did he do? The director smiled, he didn't stay where he wasn't respected. That became the quote people remembered, and that's how the story lived on, not as gossip. As guidance. Years passed, Hollywood changed faces, fashions, and sounds, but the story remained, not because it was dramatic, because it was true. Dean Martin never told it himself. He didn't need to. Stories like that don't survive on repetition. They survive on recognition. People recognize themselves in it. Every industry has a version of that set. That room. That moment when someone tries to measure you by how loud you can be. Dean Martin showed another way. He understood something most people learn too late: respect isn't demanded. It's withdrawn when it's missing. Dean didn't argue his worth. He didn't defend his resume. He didn't trade dignity for approval. He simply stopped participating. That choice confused people then. It still does, because silence feels like surrender to those who confuse noise with strength. But Dean's silence wasn't empty. It was full of certainty. Full of self-knowledge. Full of boundaries. When he walked off that set, he didn't leave weak. He left complete. That's why the room changed. That's why Hollywood adjusted, not because Dean Martin was untouchable, but because he knew when to touch nothing at all. You can see it in old footage, the way he stands. The way he listens. Dean never rushed to fill space. He let others reveal themselves first. That's not charisma. That's command. Long after the studios closed and the sets were torn down, people still talked about that moment, not with excitement, but with respect. He didn't raise his voice, they'd say. He didn't need to. And that became the lesson, not just for actors, for anyone who's ever been underestimated, for anyone who's ever been provoked into proving themselves. Dean Martin didn't win by being louder. He won by being finished with the game. That's why no one expected his reaction, and that's why no one ever forgot it, because real power doesn't enter the room loudly. It enters already known, and Dean Martin was always known.